Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jam Box. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. With that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. With that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guests.
Hi, I'm JJ.
What's up? I'm Mitch.
I'm Scott, and we're
Titans of Industry.
Hello.
What up, dude?
Thanks for joining us, and welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Back. And
Yeah.
you have been busy. Oh my goodness. You guys have been putting in all the work, and I'm super excited to sit down and talk with y'all about TOI BOX.
The TOI BOX.
We actually have just been in full screen here, so holding it up is more of a semantic, but super stoked.
We appreciate it.
So many times now. I'm super excited to get into it. But before we do, why don't we have y'all each introduce yourselves fully and say what you do in the band?
Totally.
I'm Scott. I'm guitar and vocals.
I play bass.
And that leaves me on the drums.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And guys, like I said before, album is super rad. I'm so stoked to get into this.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
For those of you that watched it from the very beginning and then just skipped to right this point, you probably heard the intro to the album and dash in the intro to the episode. And, honestly, it's a proper intro. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that you guys just didn't dive right into a track. I think it really sets the stage for what to expect in a really cool way.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that because we really worked hard to try and make the end caps work thematically to really set the mood for the record as a whole.
Yeah,
even though it's very different than a lot of the songs that are within the album itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely nailed it. Definitely nailed it. And even the one in the middle. Like, there's not a note on that because there's so many to talk about. But that point in the middle, I think you set, as you said, you set the stage just kind of like perfectly for the album in a lot of ways by doing that.
Yeah, we had talked about when we were writing those and like figuring out where they were going to go that we wanted the record to sort of have like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe as far as like not like the theme of the album, but just the energy of it really. And so like, it's cool to hear that it really does feel like an introduction. Yeah, that was sort of the idea there. So,
and actually
awesome.
That point definitely is going to resonate with words that I have for later in this episode. So that is a cool thing to hear.
It's awesome.
But now let's go ahead and let's go check out the first official full track on the album, G.I. Johnny, Swedish Guy.
Swedish Guy.
And they will call you Swedish Guy. Yes, they'll call you Swedish Guy. Yeah, they will call you Swedish Guy.
All right, and we're back. Now, respectfully, you guys, I am no stranger to this track. I have heard it many a times, both in a garage and in editing and on the internet itself. So, I mean, my words are already curated from the experience, but I think
Thank you.
as part of the album, it really opens up differently. Like it was something where like getting to hear it with other music really just kind of brings it into the realm for me. And I mean, it kind of works with a lot of the other stuff, you know what I mean? Like you've got stuff going on in it, not to mention, the guitar solo, the bass solo, like there's just so much in it that just really brings the album together. And I mean, I'm a big fan of the track. I've heard it many times, like I said. So I'm not going to speak too much on it just because there's a whole episode dedicated to it.
Absolutely.
Before I get into my first question, do you guys have anything you'd like to speak on it about?
I mean, I think one of the things I particularly enjoy about the track, and just like part of writing it really, is just how much it highlights each of us individually in terms of what we are good at as players. Like that's something that was just cool, just like being able to play to each other's strengths, and just that fun little dancey bit, you know, like towards the end before we go back out to that last verse, is just so fun. It's just classic, like, you know, just throw shit in a pot and we're just cooking, you know, just let it resonate, let it stew up.
I'm glad you guys bring it back to that, like the words at the end, like, you know, just end it on the instrumental part, like that just really pulls things back together. And I imagine, you know, because I haven't like gotten to actually see you play it live
right
in like a stage setting, I imagine you guys go bananas leading up to that point.
That dance bit is one of the funnest parts of every set.
Hell yeah.
People basically, like at a great show, they go from basically moshing to just dancing in like 2 seconds.
Okay.
And it's really fun to do that to a crowd.
Hell yeah.
They're like, oh, it's a dance song now.
Yeah.
Cool. And then they just do it.
Yeah, well, not to mention that not everybody likes to mosh, you know what I mean? So like after the heavy section, when all the moshing has kind of died away.
Oh yeah, they get to kind of come back in.
Exactly, for the dance.
They all get to enjoy
Absolutely.
for the words at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, how
and you know, I also have a really eclectic musical taste, and so like it's jamming two things that are kind of stark opposites right next to each other.
yeah. Hell yeah, I love that. Well, thank you guys for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, into the first question. What made you want to lead with that track?
Oh, that's a question for you, Mitch, because you ordered the album.
Yeah, you know, honestly, whenever I put together track orders, it's all just by feel. It's all just by, I imagine the very beginning, I imagine the very end, and I think, what do my ears want to hear next?
And then it's just dice for the rest of it.
It wasn't necessarily like this would be the best opener. It's just after the energy that we bring on it had to we had to keep it up.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. See, I appreciate it because the single's been out for about a year.
Right.
So it is one everybody knows. To put it later on, I feel like would have just been like, all right, like they're already into it. They're already moving, but they're going to hear it. And if there's going to be one track they would skip at a certain point, it would be that one if it was later.
Right.
But because it's in the beginning, you're like, oh, okay. Like here's the one I'm familiar with. I can get used to I can sing along. I can learn the sounds. I can like be ready for anything that comes after this. I'm already locked in with this familiar feeling. So like having it be an early track, it's just going to pull you right in and not make you even want to consider skipping it just because you know it.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I'm really glad you said that because that's totally never crossed my mind.
That's great.
Track
Great feedback. Yeah.
album arrangement is like kind of where my heart sits. I love when an album is really thought out in its arrangement, and that I think even if we weren't considering it that way, that is a perfect spot for it to.
Right on,
Awesome,
dude.
man.
Hell yeah. Happy little accidents.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like we said this before, but it's sort of a smorgasbord of all things Titans as far as like highlighting us as players and the types of styles and ideas that are present throughout the album. So it works really well as an opener because it's kind of like you sort of get a microcosm of the whole record in that song.
Yeah, just microdosing every individual artist.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. All right, well, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into the next track. This one's called Monsoon. All right, and we're back. Now that track was cool.
Thank you.
Big fan. I love the way that it opens up. It feels like somewhat desolate, a little bit sparse, and then the verse comes in, and it just tightens up. It was somewhat down note until the vocals open up even, but when I'm trying to figure out what to call it. I want to call it like the pre-solo or like the instrumental bridge.
Okay.
Just like I don't really know what to name that part, but like just like G.I. Johnny, you go back into another like 2-minute instrumental experience, and that was rad. Like a big fan. But the track itself it had this feel to it that because like the energy of G.I. Johnny, it hits so hard. So Monsoon was the first like track that we had to prepare for after, and it just landed so well. Like I instantly kind of connected with it.
Yes,
and like
man.
that was like, because again, I knew G.I. Johnny before, so that was the one for me. And when I heard it, I was like, I'm so excited for the rest of this album.
Hell yeah.
That is the official. We are through the gates with the two giant guys that we've known forever. Now we're on the adventure, and that one was just really. I enjoyed it a lot. But as usual, before I get into my question, do you guys have anything you'd like to share about it?
Dude.
Well, just bouncing off of what you just said, I really like that song because it just feels like you're getting drowned in like this big wave of sound. And that's kind of the whole inspiration behind bringing the instrumental part back in.
Yeah.
Is to just, okay, now that you've seen the rain from afar and you've been able to enjoy the vocals, let's get wet again. And we're just going to toss you in. And
that describes it so much better than I did.
Dude, right on. I'm glad it comes across because it really was supposed to be just this big sonic wave.
Yep, and that is exactly. I think I have that note on another track, so I don't like to reuse things times. But like that was the big thing that stood out to me in the beginning. It's just so wide. It's just so like
awesome.
Like how you said it. You just like you kind of see it there, but it's just this wall. Of sound.
Totally.
Yeah, and for me as a musician, one of the coolest parts of that song is the BPM for it is really slow. I mean, it's 60, right?
It's 57 or something.
Yeah,
it's really slow.
I mean, that's hard to do as a musician. People don't think playing slow is hard, but it is super difficult to not rush, especially at a show when things are amped. But that I think is a big part of why it just feels so massive. Is there's so much space that the sound is actually taking up.
Yeah, very much so. Hell yeah. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. Before I actually get into the question, do y'all play that track live?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and does it play out the same way?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, honestly, it's like
Now
one
I
of my
definitely have to
favorite.
come to a live show. That one for sure.
On November 7th.
Yeah.
They're at the album release party.
When you're watching this.
Yes.
It's about to happen.
Yeah. All right, now let's get a technical question out of the way.
Cool.
Was it all like recorded and mixed and mastered in the same place? Like, did you guys set it out in any way, or did you do it all yourselves? How did you actually go about tracking the album?
Yeah, so the engineering was all us in the garage. So we I always take pride in we're a garage band. Like we are literally a garage band. We practice in garages.
Mark that.
We don't mix in garage bands, so
We're real people. We're not a computer program
Yes.
called GarageBand. Unless you're talking about the world as a large computer program and we're just little synapses within it.
And unless you're watching this on a computer.
yes. In which case, we're sort of literally a computer at this moment. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
But,
getting back to it.
yeah, but we recorded everything ourselves for this album, and one of the things that the guy who mixed it and mastered it is a huge part of why it sounds so good for sure. But we really we did 4 demos. We did half the record 4 times. And the 4th time we were like, okay, this is good enough to actually print. And it's one of the reasons this record took almost 4 years to make is we were basically learning how to do that for ourselves in the making of this record. And I'm really proud of the quality of the recording that we got with our drum mic setup for this is a $300 drum mic set.
I remember it.
Yeah, it was the same one. Yeah, and so that, the way the drums sound on the final for that is amazing. We got 5 mics and they cost less than $500. We're using 57s and used DI boxes that I got reverb, and so we're really homegrown. The way this was recorded, and we took the time to figure out how to make that lack of budget and the technology that we had available really sing. And so it was awesome. A lot of work. These guys dealt with me halfway through a track just throwing my headphones off and being like, I'm not recording myself, or the snare's peaking, because they're trying to do it while we're running. And so all those hiccups and bumps in the road, and we got there.
It's what makes it fun.
Yeah. For them.
No.
No, it was honestly that part of making this record was one of the coolest things I've ever done as a musician and a recording artist. Just because I'm no joke, put like 7,000 or 8,000 hours into work in that department over the last few years to do the record. So just the growth and getting the result was just like so cool for me personally.
Hell yeah. I love that. And it's cool that you guys really like decided to take the first stage of it as yourselves, because that's where the sound is really crafted. I think, a good mixing engineer can make anything sound like anything technically. And like once it gets to that stage, once it gets to the mastering, like, yes, there's a bunch of magic that has to happen.
Yeah.
But like if you take the time and you care about the start, if you care about the recording you give to the engineer, they can make a lot more magic happen with it than like somebody who's like, oh, I just did this off my phone.
Yeah, here, make something.
Sure.
There's so much that can go along. Like the best tracks start as good recordings.
Right.
Yeah.
That is just the way that it goes.
Yeah.
And so like taking the effort, taking the time and like putting in that part of it. And it is cool. It's appreciated that you guys would care enough to like put the effort in. You know what I mean? Like want that for your sound.
For sure.
And just the last bit.
Yeah, please.
It shows. Like in the album.
yeah, dude.
Like all the way through. Because like, yes, it is mixed well. Yes, it is mastered well. But there is a cohesiveness that a lot of other bands I've heard before definitely don't end up having through the whole album, because they're just like, oh, we'll track it here, we'll track it there, we'll do it with this, we'll do it with that. So to have like the put togetherness that you can feel started at the source, it's so
cool.
Really rad.
I'm glad you said that, because this piggybacks the thing you just said is the way we recorded this was sort of hybrid, old school, new school. So the guitars and the overdubs on the guitars and the vocals were recorded after, but the drums and the bass takes that you hear are them in the room. We would play the song over and over again until they had like really, really good chemistry. Yeah. And hopefully I had some good chemistry. But I was watching the tape and stuff, so sometimes it's like, I'll just redo the guitars. It's cool. Yeah. But like that, I think, is why that comes across in the album. Is it's really them looking at each other, like smiling and having those real moments that we have on stage, but getting it down on tape.
Yeah.
And playing off each other's energy, like like when you're recording by yourself and you make a little mistake, it can completely throw you off. But when you're playing with your homie and you make a mistake and he's laughing at you and you're like, okay, I gotta step it up.
Yep.
It makes like you can feel that in the recording, and it makes it so much better. No,
definitely. And even like it's cool that you guys would take the effort to track the bass and the drums together, because they are the foundation instruments in both their respects. The drums literally are the foundation of the beat itself, and then the bass is the glue. That is the role of the bass as it's often known. And so to have those two things be interlocked by happening at the same time, especially because drums, when they're tracked by themselves, just as the drums, I feel like there's just a little something missing, because drummers do listen to the instruments. That is not an ignored fact.
Oh, absolutely.
And so like the fact that you guys actually did take the time to do it together the whole way through the album, I think that does really reflect a lot of the put togetherness. Not to say that you tracking it afterwards didn't also add it, but also you are two instruments
at once. Yeah,
that's true.
And that is those two things need to be together as well. So I think you taking the time to focus on them individually, because you weren't. Were you tracking both of them at the same time?
No. Yeah.
That would have been a lot.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but another piece of the puzzle is we're recording it ourselves. So when we track Scotty, he's sitting there with his instrument and I'm on the board.
Okay, so you at least detach yourself.
Right. Yeah. When I'm actually tracking, I can sit and be a musician, and these guys can help. Some like a comment. This actually comes from a guy named Greg Harrison, who helped us a lot with this exact part of the album. He was sort of my guru in getting to a more professional place with my engineering. And just a comment on like the bass and drum thing. Here's one of my metaphors here. But like a house, if you have a good foundation to an old house, you can tear down the walls and remodel it over and over and over again. If you have an old house that you like the inside, but the foundation is crummy, it is so much harder to go in and fix the foundation. And so music works like, and he literally said that exact thing to me, and it like the light bulb went off. And so if you get your drums and bass with like real energy and they're sound good, you can go back in and put the paint and walls up you do 900 guitar takes until you nail it and slap it on those good drums and bass and it'll work.
Hell yeah. That is a rad metaphor.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome.
All right, but now let's go ahead. We're technically the next track, which is Trainwreck Barbie, is all instrumental. So it's a little tough for me to be able to speak on because I am not that type of a savant, and it would have been hard for me to pick a 15-second clip. So we are actually going to jump to track 5, The Devil and the Details.
Beyond your wildest dreams, I know your look, son, I know your sigh, yes, I know you're grown. Answer one question, your life with this pension, your soul with this gold.
All right, we're back. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, dude.
It's on there. Those are real words. That track is badass.
Let's go.
Right on, man.
It's like Primus meets Tenacious D.
Yeah.
The bass line after the intro comes in tough, and it holds down the whole track.
Yes, it
The whole
does.
track, which is legitimate. That track is a progressive roller coaster.
Oh, it's
And what's
so
crazy
sick.
for me is that it's the second longest track of the album.
Yeah.
It's a whopping 7 minutes and 17 seconds. But unlike the last few tracks, there isn't like an exceptionally long instrumental. Like up until like the very end, and then it's just heavy as shit.
Yeah.
Definitely a contender for favorite track of mine at this juncture.
Thanks,
but
man.
I'll save that for the end when we round out that question. And now, in usual form, before I ask my question, do you guys have anything you'd like to say about it?
Dude,
3 plus 3 plus 2.
is all it lines up to. No.
Would you mention what the time signature was? That's on the board too. That is thank you for making up the first thing.
Straight up, it's 4/4, and it's just 3 and 3 and 2 all the way down.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's so fun. That's all. Honestly, part of what's, Mitch is a huge math guy. So when we start delving into all those little things, like even if it is something that is just in 4/4, like something that is sort of, I guess, quote unquote basic, like he always has very creative ways of approaching it to make it sort of change and be a little different. But yeah, I'm really glad because for me as well, it's one of my, I think it's probably tied for one of my favorite tracks, like personally for me as well. And it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool things about the track that I enjoy personally. I think one of the big things, like you mentioned, Mitch's bass really just holding it down the whole time. It's really cool because it's like, there was so much we were able to add, but there was almost this exercise in restraint where it's like, okay, here is what the song is. So what do we do to add to that, like layer by layer, and not necessarily divert, like the part itself is good enough to create everything that the song is now.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of that personally, of just like us being able to sort of hold back a bit and sort of a less is more sort of thing in terms of this track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, before you guys further, one thing I don't really have a note about, so I'm just going to punch it in right here. You guys are a 3-piece band. That is, the reality. This is the whole band. Never during the album did it not feel like 3 pieces.
Nice.
But also, never not feel full.
Awesome.
So that like I didn't feel like there were a bunch of extra pieces that weren't, in actuality. I felt like almost everything could be played live, and every track felt really complete from all 3, and I guess 3 plus 1 pieces that were involved in it. So like the overtime of every instrument really expands during the whole album.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wanted to get that here because I knew I wouldn't stick it in later.
That's
So
sick. I appreciate
back to
that.
what you guys, or did you guys have anything else you'd like to add about the track?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. First of all, that's really awesome. I guess this is the last thing I wanted to say was just that end, like you mentioning just that last part where we kind of just chug out on that. Like that to me is really fun because that's sort of more of like, I used to play a lot of metalcore when I was younger.
Yeah,
So,
same.
like, getting to have like this moment where it's just this real heavy, thick chug that just made me so happy. So every time we play it live, I just get so giddy.
And we'd been talking for years about a song with a breakdown, and like it was just sort of the perfect opportunity to do it. And so it's really, and it goes so hard live. It's the best.
It does. And now I'm gonna nerd out a little bit. So it's fun too because the chug came from, again, Mitch's part, right? Like Mitch's thing is the thing that holds down everything. And so Scott was actually the one that had the idea because he's doing this pluck, hammer on, pull off thing and then thumping with the thumb. And so Scott was like, oh, what if we like accented the opposite parts? So that's how we got both of those separate patterns that we go to and from. So it's like one is just basing off when he's hitting with his thumb and the other's based off of when he's doing his little plucks.
Oh, hell yeah.
So yeah, it's just,
We invert his pattern to create the chug pattern.
Yeah.
Which is something I stole from Periphery.
super sick though.
Okay, well, shout out Periphery now.
Yes. Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's rad. Thank you guys for sharing that insight. That's a really cool piece to know about.
Yeah.
But now for the next question. And you kind of said this before, but we're going to expand on it a little bit.
Cool.
How long did it take to write the album?
Oh.
Quite a while. I mean, if you're talking about like when we had all the songs finalized to the versions where we wanted to record, it was probably a total of 3 years.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, songs happen here and there and you get an idea, you kind of lose steam on it. But once we kind of had, I would say like 8 out of the 13 tracks, it only took about 2 months to finish the last 5.
Yeah.
And so like we just sort of mess around with stuff, and then once we start to feel like, okay, these songs we really like and we want to put them on a project, you start to look at them as a whole and you think, what can we add to this, or how can we supplement this with other tunes? And so really it was like a 3.5 year process, but the bulk of the work was probably 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah.
What were the 5 that got written in the latter half?
You know, I can't tell you exactly which
Devil,
ones, but
sure,
The
this
Devil in the
one.
Details and Life, the Universe, Almost Everything were definitely like the last 2.
The hero poem
yeah.
thing. Yeah, and that was just not to change the song subject, but yeah, that was just like some crazy thing I wrote. And I was like, can we put this on the album?
We'll do it anyways.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, once you start to see the project coming together, you see how that could fit in thematically with the rest, or supplement, or add some other kind of feel, or I don't know.
Like another color.
Yeah, exactly.
No, definitely.
Put another color on the palette and let's see how that adds to the painting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually segues well into the next track. We're going to jump ahead a little bit, and we're going to talk about a pretty colorful one. This one is Methbeard the Pirate.
I was the chieftain, son of God. I was so stuck up inside of my shit. I was afraid for the gift of words, walking around, giving them lip. And I would do anything, not to do anything. I've tried everything just to shut up. But you lift to me, man, you lift the
All right, we're back. Now the name, very fitting, very fitting. Unlike its counterparts, excuse me, it's a very long instrumental to start off. It just hits you with that right away. Now, I just love pointing out where the instrumental parts in the songs are, so I'm just going to keep doing that.
Sure.
But the track in total definitely had very like early System of a Down vibe. It was very like, it was chaotic, it was dense, it felt like it was going to go off the rails at any moment from start to finish. It had this very like hold my beer energy. Yeah.
Hold my Pookie energy.
I could break down the song forever. It's got a lot going on. But the thing that I thought was craziest to me is you guys just fade it out at the end.
Yeah.
Like that, and creative decisions are all yours, and I'm not going to say it, but that was the one where I was like, there's got to be something crazy happening at the end of this. There's going to be some kind of explosion, or dude's just going to go off the rails completely. No, you just ended on the fade out.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting choice, you guys.
Well, let's just say meth don't quit.
Yeah.
Meth
Yes.
don't.
Yes, very much so.
And I almost like, as far as the theme of the album, we almost like kind of painted like a hero's journey thing on top of it. Me and Jay especially, just after the tracks were ordered. And so I almost feel like Methbeard is like some type of character that the hero meets that drives him back away, because that's like a moment in the album where things change. Like the songs after Methbeard are nothing like that song and like Lassen County Blues, and like those are more I don't want to say methy, but they're more janky, and then it changes back into some more straight ahead rock stuff, and so I feel like almost like the character meets this person and there's like something to learn from them, and then they just freak out, and the character's like, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah.
You just leave Methbeard where you found him, being
it's,
a crazy person.
Kind of tying back to your theme out how you said it's like you want to give that Saturday cartoon vibe. They're kind of like the filler episode character.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just like that. This is part of the story. But the animators needed a day to get the next episode in line. So we're going to give you this. It's still there, but is it?
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it's still a cool track. And it's just, I appreciate when albums have something that's still in the realm, but not quite there 100%.
Huh.
It's nice to, because if you overdo the direction of the album the entire time, I think you can really, you can get it too locked in.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's a crazy track.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just go goofy with it for the sake of goofy. There's still very much, there's an element to it. There's a talent in it. There's an effort in it. And it's a fun track.
Yes.
It's a fun track.
Yeah.
But now, actually, that kind of segues. No, we're going underground for this one. It segues well into it.
Yeah.
Fresh.
This next question: was there a vision for the album, like as it was coming together? Like, did you kind of have a direction you wanted to go, or did it just over time kind of reveal itself?
I think it revealed itself more than anything. Honestly, because to a certain extent, as a band, it's just what we've written in the last couple years, right? Like we want to make a record. These are the songs we have. So that's certainly a part of it. But I think after, like, we have this whiteboard with like all our like plans on it and stuff. And Mitch
Just a bunch of red string.
Yes, yeah, that's funny you say that. We did that in a music video. But Mitch just one day, we were talking about album order. We had all the tracks. They weren't all recorded, but we knew what the tracks were going to be. And he wrote the album order, and I'm pretty sure it's the one you just wrote. It was just the instinct worked out. And after the tracks were there and we could start imagining them in order, the theme and the Saturday cartoon thing and the kind of like, this is sort of a hero's journey in a weird way, like all of that did sort of reveal itself at that point, at least to me.
Yeah, and part of the reason why we called it Toy Box is because so many of the songs are starkly different from each other. And so it's like, here's a bunch of toys that are all in the same box, but they don't necessarily get played with together all the time.
Hell yeah.
But you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, like you could pull out your sticky hand and play with a Barbie doll at the same time, even though you probably aren't going to most times.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a weird example, but
Well, funny enough, that is the next breakdowns question.
Beautiful.
We put the wagon before the horse on that one, but it is still cool to share. And hey, at the end of the day, the question's got to get answered. It happens organically. But that is, I appreciate that insight on it. And it's cool because, like you said, the tracks are different, but they don't feel like thrown together. You know what I mean? Like there is still that theme.
right, they're all toys in the box.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's all played with by the same kid.
Yeah, there you go.
Hell yeah, I dig that. All right, well, with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into the next track. This one's called Catastrophe.
Searching for something else, twisted tongue, I have no doubt. Blood on my hand, blood in my eyes and mouth.
All right, and we're back. Now, that was another one I was pretty familiar with. You know, that's one that's been available for a little while. There are a couple that have, but like that one I kind of knew. And in my opinion, it's probably your most straightforward track.
Yeah.
Like it's very driving, it's very exciting, it's super full sounding, and it's pretty catchy. Like it has those elements, and it doesn't really go off the rails or like deviate into anything like too theatrical or overly explosive. And it might be a little on the nose, but it definitely rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's it's one that kind of like sat there with me, and like again, since I already knew it, I didn't want to put too many words on it because I'd be over prepared at this point. So in usual fashion, do you guys have anything you'd like to share with it before I get into my question?
It's fun to play. It's in 7.
Yep.
And that's fun. I like that.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, like I said, since it's one that everybody's kind of known for a while, I'm gonna dive into this one, and I want to have fun with this question now that we have a little room for it. On a more individual level, what are some of, like, how did you approach the making and the writing of the album and such?
Oh man. Okay, so my answers might be a little weird, honestly, but part of why this record took 3.5 years was I went through like some serious writer's block, and Catastrophe was probably like a real moment. And I'll like be completely real. Mitch wrote like half of the guitar parts in that song because I just couldn't get there with the stuff. And so like, as far as approaching like that song in particular and that part of the writing process for the album, it was really like a journey of self-discovery for me to get back into like, because when I was younger, I used to write songs constantly. There was a point in high school where I was writing 4 or 5 songs a week. And it was like the thing I did. I was a songwriter before everything as a musician. And so it was weird and kind of scary to be in a place where these guys were presenting me with things and I was sort of coming up short over and over again. And so the thing that really, on this song in particular, on Catastrophe, that I really felt good about was I really went in a direction that none of us expected with the vocals. And I think it worked really, really well. And it's also part of what I actually wrote about in the vocals. If you listen to the words, like it's about a guy on the verge of a catastrophe who's searching for something and everything he finds is sort of a disaster. And so that is sort of in line with how I was feeling during the writing of this song. And it was kind of interesting because, like, again, like we had a ton of momentum by the time we hit those last 6 months and we like pounded out the last 5 songs. But I also kind of came back in a sense, is like a lot of my ideas started being good again, like for lack of a better way to say it. And so, yeah, I really went through a lot in as far as the songwriting, because I used to identify very heavily as a songwriter and took a lot of pride in my songwriting. And so when I realized that, like, not just their opinion, but like in like very objectively, like I just wasn't operating on the same level, that took a lot to like dig into that and be like, okay, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to get back to where I know I can be and do these guys justice.
And you did, man.
Yeah, facts.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Before we get to your guys' answer, that's a really vulnerable experience to like be able to share. Like, I don't think a lot of people talk enough about the fact that music is not a faucet you just turn on and you can leave running forever. Like, it's more, if it is, it's the hot water. You know what I mean? Like, and for a while it comes out, and if you leave it all the way open, it comes out super hot. And then at some point it goes away.
Yeah.
And it won't go away forever. You turn that faucet off, you let the heat, you let the water heater do its thing. But I think that there is, like, especially in this generation where or this era of music where we're trying to do like singles every minute and like doing all this and do all that, that hot water is what everybody wants. And there is a way to capture it. And sometimes it does go away. And as a creator, that is the scariest part, because, like, especially when it's your passion, when it's your lifeblood, when it's something that really matters to you and like expressing yourself to the world. Right. Like that is something scary, but it's cool that you had, a couple of rad dudes that could be around and like know that it's not gone forever, and they're happy to fill in and like add to their, and even to have people who can contribute on the level that you can respect and appreciate enough to carry you through that.
Yeah, and to push me to that, like, when they see something that's subpar, we're the type of band that we don't shy away from telling each other, like, this just isn't it, man.
But, at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily that anyone pushed you into it. I think it's more just being willing to say, hey, man, this might not be the best. Let's just shelf it for a minute. And
Jay just gets up and hits delete. Just walks from behind the drum, just,
no.
Not it, sir. But I mean, kind of on your point there, Mitch, like it is like encouragement, not hey, you suck. Yeah. But like we have really high standards, and we try to be objective about what we're listening to when we listen to ourselves. And if there's something that's missing, we're honest about it. We say, hey, something is missing. Yeah. And part of one strategy to that Mitch mentioned earlier is we just wait. Just go, that song's not ready. Yep. And another strategy is if it's like, this is ready except for this thing, then it's like having a conversation or even suggesting ideas, which happened on Catastrophe. But yeah, just doing whatever needs to be done, basically, to get where we know it should be.
Doing whatever needs to be done without making yourself feel like it's a dire situation.
Yeah.
You know, still
Yeah.
allowing yourself to have enough of a relaxed mental state to where you can produce something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it has to be fun, or
You know, and
it doesn't work.
And just to add, you know, like it's not just about expressing yourself to the world. Sometimes it's literally just about expressing yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and just that self-discovery of what is inside of me. And when you don't like what's coming out of yourself, it can be really hard, you know, like it could put you in a really bad place.
Mhm.
So just having this support system of a band, like I'm so glad I'm not just making electronic music. Not that I'm sure those guys have
Yeah,
their
nothing-
ways of getting
nothing wrong
through
with
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
But just I couldn't imagine not having a team there.
Yeah.
When the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that, and I think, you know, and you guys, obviously, you've been playing together for a pretty long time. You guys are all equally competent musicians in your own right. And I think that even from like when, you know, we first got together way back when,
Right.
and like did the original interview with you guys in the single song performance, there's glue there. You know what I mean? There is something that I think really translates well. And like you said, that there has to be, you know, people that are pushing you, but not like trying to like shove you in the
Right,
direction,
right,
but more
right.
like picking you up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like when there's one pair of footprints in the sand kind of thing, but they're 3 different feet shape because sometimes one of y'all is carrying it more than the others. That's just part
Right.
of being in a team. That's really what
Absolutely.
it comes down to, is like there's not a leader and a follower. It's just we are all working towards the same goal, and y'all are so passionate about seeing that goal happen that you're all there. You're all
Man,
ready
absolutely.
to carry whatever needs to be at that time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's like, yeah, just in terms of writing, that's part of what makes it so great, you know, because there's like tons of like you said, we've been playing together for a long time,
Mhm.
and so like, you know, you have people that you know that are supportive, and you have other people that are like, oh, you know, you're still doing the band thing with them, blah blah blah.
The thing. I hate
Oh, the thing, it
They're
sucks.
doing that little music stuff.
Yeah, and so it's like it's
With you on that, Jimmy.
yeah, but it means so much, you know what I mean? Because that's part of it, is like, you know, beyond being willing to help the other people, whoever it may be, like it's not even being willing, like we want to. Like
Yeah.
we wouldn't still be a band even with everything we've gone through. Like there's been so many moments where we could have just hit the delete button and just been like, you know what, screw it, we're done.
Yeah.
But it's been proven from all 3 of us multiple times that we just this is something we genuinely care about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to talk about the show itself much on the show. I really try to leave it out of the realm. But just to kind of align with what you're saying, I remember the moment where I like decided that I knew this was what I was going to do. Like it was just a random Tuesday at like somewhere in the early 200s.
Yeah.
But further past that, I remember later, somewhere around the 400s, when I realized that as adults, we have to decide what we're going to do with our life at some point. Now, is it fair that they ask us in elementary school? No, certainly not. Like that is not the time. But at a certain point, you get to make the decision on what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like just as a person, you have to decide, oh, am I going to be this kind of person, that kind of person? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? Like you get to pick the things. And some of it gets decided based upon like, you know, like I can't be a doctor at this point.
Sure, right.
Late in the game to just pick up the scalpel. Yeah. I don't even think doctors do that. Either way, back to it.
They're a type of doctor.
Oh yeah. Nip Tuck's a TV show, right?
Throwback.
At a certain point, you get to pick the thing that you want to dedicate a series of your life to, and if it's either the whole thing or a window of time, but at a certain point, you have to decide it. And your guys' music, I think, reflects that well. There is clearly the decision to care.
Thank you.
And that is not something that everybody shares because they're either not at that walk in life or they haven't found the thing to dedicate their lives to.
True.
So I really appreciate you guys just kind of leaning into that part and just showing that while there are layers, those layers just still stack up to reach the making of good music.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man.
All right, but with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next track. This one's called The Death of the Hero in the Temple of the Mind.
On the throne of ultimate evil himself.
All right, we're back. Now, similar to Lassen County Blues, which we didn't get to talk about in this episode, but if y'all have listened to the album, well, by the time y'all listen to the album and you get to this part, you will know. That track is a bit enigmatic.
Uh-huh.
It starts off very slow, basically just a narrative.
Yeah.
But it for sure doesn't stay that way. I know for a fact the 15-second clip that I picked for the song does not do the song justice. You heard? You're going to have to wait 2 days, go listen to it, and you'll be like, I get what he's saying. Yeah. But it's definitely a solid track.
Thank you.
It's something that, like, I've slowly coined this as Jimmy's weird take of the week.
Love it.
It reminds me of Fire Coming Out of the Monkey's Head.
Okay, yeah.
Demon off of Gorillaz
That's
Demon
kind of
Days
funny. Mitch,
Yeah.
when we were writing it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Hey, bass player knowledge connected. No, but it does. It had that, and the imagery in it, I think, is really the thing that stood out to me the most. It is
Awesome.
it was a really special track for the album, and it was placed perfectly.
Hey.
I think it may also be kind of in the exact same spot in correlation to the album.
That's
as
interesting. Yeah, it's
Comes Out of the Monkey's
towards
Head.
the end, right?
Yeah.
Because that's like the third to last track.
Yeah, just before
That
Don't Get
is
Lost.
in
I
our
think
same.
there's
Yeah.
15 tracks on that album.
Gotcha.
So respectfully, they're
Wow.
right in the right spot.
Way to go, Damon.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. But before I get into the next question, do you guys have anything you'd like to share about that track?
It's I think what's the word?
Matic.
Thank you. It's hard to say.
Brain word.
No, but it's I like it a lot because this sort of approaching this song was cool because I've talked before about how, like, when we have ideas as a band, like, or not even as a band, just if an individual has an idea, no matter how sort of strange or maybe slightly off the rails it might be, like, we're always willing to try it and see if it can work.
Mhm.
And so the thing I like about this song the most is that it is very thematic in terms of what it ends up growing into,
Mhm.
right? So it's like it is sort of that story that sucks you in, and then, like, after you get to sort of this climax of the narrative, it sort of breaks off into this really big part, sort of representing, like, the protagonist and the antagonist having this, like, really epic battle of, like, I need to defeat you, but I don't want to die. So, like, having it sort of become something bigger than it is, and then being able to fall back to this, like, very satisfying conclusion is really cool. So it's fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Like I said, you guys, whatever's 15 seconds I pick,
Yeah.
they're not a 15-second moment that does the track true justice for what it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I really like that because, like, the one part that you don't get spelled out for you is the most exciting part of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the thing that everybody wants to see happen. We don't let you see it. We just let you hear it from behind the wall.
Mhm.
You know, you can hear the battle, but you can't see the blows.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's got this really cool kind of juxtaposition where you have this bare bones narrative and then this really big fight scene that you kind of are in the dark about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And definitely took a little inspiration from Gil Scott on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scotty had the idea of putting together basically an epic poem,
Mm-hmm.
and we were trying to think, what can really go behind the poem and support it instrumentally without taking over from the song. And so I was like, well, what if we just try this sort of Gil Scott spoken word kind of thing where we just kind of keep it light and a little bit funky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like how that lends itself to us being able to, like, depict that fight scene without words.
Mhm.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have a question about the lyric, so forgive me if I
No, please,
go off the rails here.
I'm not a big lyrics person. It takes me a long time for words to permeate. So I'll probably never have a good question for it. So please share as much as you can.
Cool. So the song this is going to be the most pretentious sentence anyone has ever said on your podcast.
Okay, I'm excited.
So, and I tried very hard to make it in the song not be pretentious because the idea is ridiculous. But what the song is it's a Herculean reconceptualization of the Jungian interpretation of the myth of Jesus.
Oh.
And I know that's completely insane. But basically I was in therapy. I had, part of the writer's block and stuff. And I was like, I should go talk to someone. And they like second therapy session were like, have you ever heard of Carl Jung? Which is not what you want your therapist to say. But I went.
You mean my second uncle?
But I went and read like all this stuff, and I read his interpretation of Jesus, and basically, he's this archetype idea is that there's sort of like ducks know to follow their mother when they're born. No one has to teach them. Humans have the same internal genealogical code. Because we're a language-based, visual-based species, we kind of see those things or interpret them as thoughts and feelings. And Jung sort of tried to break that down. And so his idea was one of the reasons that a Jesus-type myth permeates in all ancient cultures is that humans have to get to a point in their development where they sort of realize they can't be a god on earth, and they have to allow that god part of themselves to die to a certain extent so they can make way for sort of omniscient acceptance of what actually being alive is, and the acceptance of sin and the acceptance of yourself. And that was something I was just going through as a 28-year-old in the world. Just like I had done a lot of cool things. There's plenty of things that I felt really good about, and I just felt like limited in the ways that I am limited and wasn't coming to terms with those things. And so that interpretation of that myth really hit home for me. And we were playing in practice, and we sort of played the R&B thing by itself without any words. It was just kind of a thing we were jamming on in practice, and my brain went, we join our hero on the last leg of this epic journey. And I was like, oh, there's something to this. And I sort of used that interpretation of the myth to be like, what if it's like, a hero is like Hercules, he's coming to the end of his trials, and there's this ultimate enemy that's shrouded in shadow, and when he meets the enemy is him, and he realizes the only way to kill the enemy is to allow himself to die. And then at the end of the song, like a man unknown to the children of the forest is in the little epilogue thing, but that's sort of like the resurrection part of the Jesus story, where like the guy now is probably a combination of both those people, and he's left the temple as this new being, and it says he moves with ease, because I make the point that the jungle is like one of the gnarliest places or the gnarliest place you can be, and the hero is like trudging through it and beating off the creatures of the forest and all this stuff, and so he moves swiftly and without any effort out of that scenario and back into life at the end of the song. And so that's sort of what the song is. Are you laughing at me saying I'm beating off the creatures of the forest? Yeah.
I was trying so hard to not laugh.
I yes. That too.
I was
no, but welcome to our band, guys. But that is like, it was basically what I talked about in my first 6 months of therapy, woven into an epic poem. And sort of a comment on other songs like G.I. Johnny and Devil in the Details. There's certain songs on this album that are just big ass stories. And that came from, I really like, if you leave me up to my own devices, I basically write introspective lyrics. That's where my brain goes, emotionally based lyrics. And there's tons of that on the album too. But Mitch approached me when we were getting into the lyric writing part of it, and he was like, something I really love about Primus is that there's these stories. And he was like, we don't really have any stories on the first record on Sauce. It's all just kind of introspective stuff. And so I really made the point on this record where I felt the vibe of the song was lending itself to it, to like write a story instead of doing the whole thoughts and feelings thing. And so this was like kind of the ultimate version of that, where I was like, what if it was just a story and a breakdown? So
hell yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to add to it? I feel like that covers a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I really just hate talking about me on episodes, but
please
ask me about, we'll do it off camera, but ask me about the writing structure for Smooth Talk.
Okay.
I was in before COVID. there's a correlativeness to it, but I don't want to leave
Sweet.
it on here.
Yeah.
I do, since we are rounding it out, this is a second to last like big question I'll have in the middle part. Let's take a moment and let's find out, what is everybody's favorite track on the album?
Mine's Life, the Universe, and Almost Everything, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the hardest song for me to write in all aspects, but especially lyrically. And I tried to hold nothing back in that track as far as how vulnerable I was going to be with the lyric. And so that takes a lot, especially like most of the people who are our fans are also kind of our friends, you know, at this stage in our career. And so
You just flame them name by name.
yeah, I just laid it out. No, but yeah. But like, you know, to say something that lets people into a part of yourself that you might not share in conversation with them, but they can easily know what you're talking about because they were around you the last couple years, can be really scary, and something that I've really tried to do as a songwriter in the last I mean, my whole time as a songwriter, but especially with the rock music and in the writing of this album, was just like not care. Just like if I write something and I get that like deep feeling in my chest and I'm like, oh, there's something here, just like go with it and like be unapologetic. And so, yeah, that song's my favorite for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, definitely looking forward to checking it out next, because that's the one coming up after this, I believe.
Sweet.
But let's hear from the rest of y'all first.
The more I listen to the album, the more I like Your. I think Your is my favorite track, even though it is just one of the transitional kind of end cap glue to the. It's so slinky, and I love that it's down tempo, and it just makes me picture the Grinch going for the presents.
Just doing the big long.
Yeah, dude,
That's so perfect.
Totally. And you know that bass line got stuck in my head, and I just did not know what to do with it. I could not figure out how to make it a full track, and then like a light bulb just went off. What if we make it the end caps? And then the third light bulb, I was like, what if we put it in the middle but slow? And then I heard it recorded, and I was like, bro. Hell yeah.
I love that.
Hell yeah.
Dude, that's so funny. The Grinch thing is so so spot on. I can't even like
3 feet, just
so good.
across the floor. Yeah.
So funny. No, yes, I was saying that Devil in Details is like tied with one. That is the other song that's tied with is Life, the Universe, and Almost Everything. And so, I mean, it has kind of bounced back and forth for me as I've been listening to the album too, but I do think it leans more heavily towards Life, the Universe, and Almost Everything. It's my favorite. We'll talk about it in a second.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear that. Now I'm very nervous to break down that track. 2/3 of the room's favorite.
It's our baby, Jimmy.
All right. Now, you do technically have an outro track, but this is the last full track in the album. So why don't you guys go ahead, look at the camera, and introduce it.
This is Life, the Universe, and Almost Everything by Titans of Industry.
It's great.
10 years older, never sober, broke boy soldier. Everything's a mess, not lazy, fucking crazy. Make me.
All right. And we're back. Now that we've made it to the end, and now with everything you guys have said and no pressure on me whatsoever,
Of course.
his words are actually here. It was the perfect ending to the album.
Hey.
It felt so complete. It felt so melodic. It was powerful. It was relatable, and it made me want to sing along.
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Hell yeah, dude.
Breath of fresh air, and unlike a lot of other final tracks on albums, because I've talked about these on the show, where it doesn't have this like time to wrap up feel. It has more of a we finally made it here feeling, almost like we had reached the peak of this mountain and we could now see through the clouds. Like just you know that
Hell yeah.
scene in every like perfect photograph where somebody's standing there and you get to see past there was this
That's
but
so
like that,
cool.
you have to close your eyes when you breathe out kind of feel.
Yeah.
And it was just such a good track. Such a good track. Big fan.
Thank you.
But now I would love to hear more of your guys' thoughts now that we've kind of gotten to let everybody hear a small snippet of it.
Yeah, man, I think you pretty much nailed it on that. That's like the exact feeling that I got from it when we got it all put together, and I mean, that's really why I wanted it to go last. That was like, it just has this feeling of a sigh of relief after all this chaos, you know, and like seeing above the clouds is like the perfect analogy to that.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's awesome.
And I feel like maybe even artistically, I kind of felt that way too, where I had been kind of putting all this pressure on myself to make my parts, I wouldn't say necessarily complicated, but like really add enough things that it's worth putting on it and on life, the universe, and almost everything. I just like tried to approach it as simply as I could. I just want to be the harmonic background to like just this nice floating on the clouds kind of feeling.
And you know, I noticed that in that track, how like the bass wasn't like, not that you're overly done in any of your tracks, like you are, but as a 3-piece, you have room to really push the boundaries of your playing. And I don't feel like that was the case in that track.
Yeah, man. And it
wasn't missed. You know what I mean? Like you were right where you needed to be.
Oh, thank you, man. Cause yeah, that was really the motivation, was to lay that full groundwork without stepping my toes all over it. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Dude, nailed it too. Like, absolutely beautiful. Like the way he sort of, because he is sort of this force in all the other songs, right? Like he is like very upfront, and it's like a big part of what we drive off of when we're writing songs. Like, here he's like sort of, like floating around, and it just accents it perfectly. And the sigh of relief, like we've sort of been touching on like the sort of story behind the album of it being this like hero's journey, and like the guy finding out that he has to let himself die in order to sort of move on. And so like the song itself is so very emotional, like Scott was saying earlier. And it's so it's like this this transcending sort of vibe, and sort of this self-realization, like even some of the lyrics like touching on like things that you could have done that you didn't do, and like the it's so easy to get so wrapped up in that, and like you sort of just like even beat yourself up. But it's like when you get to that point where it's not anger, it's acceptance, and then you sort of can move on and evolve into something else. And that song, to me, why I love it so much is like it was just another kind of silly little kooky idea. Like I was just like, hey guys, like I really like the idea of having an 8-bar phrase where we play in 5/8 and then the last one's in 6/8, so you get the swingy feel and it's all nice for the turnaround. And then like that was just literally the sentence that I mentioned. And then as we started putting it together, it turned into what it is now. And so mind-blowing to me. Like, it's one of those moments that you're like, oh, we did that? Like, you're like, we did that? Like, that's crazy, dude. Like, and so it's cool. And I also really think that for what the song is, hearing you say that you wanted to sing along and stuff like that, like, is huge, because I was actually just talking to my wife about this, and I was like, I think that for what the song is, it's actually insanely palatable. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's another song that's like 7 minutes. Like, it's like people don't write 7-minute songs, so it's super long.
Yeah, I think it is the longest track.
Yeah, it is.
It's like 7 minutes and 56 seconds or something.
Yeah, it's super long. It's in an odd meter. Like, there's all these things that are super non-conventional about it, and we were able to sort of navigate it in a way to turn it into that, which is just really cool to me. Like, so I take a lot of pride in that song, and so it's just really cool to hear. So
yeah, man, I think we got to give Scott his flowers on this one, because
absolutely,
as good as the instrumentation on it is, the lyrics just send it over the top for me, dude. Like,
absolutely.
Thank you.
I remember one of the first times I heard the full mix, there's in that one verse, there's just those background vocals where you can hear Scott saying, you know, I love you. And the first time I heard that, just total chills right from the top of my head down to my toes.
Yeah,
man.
So,
Thank you.
dude.
Yeah, good stuff.
For real.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you talk, but I just real quick. It's so funny. Like, we always joke about like Scott sort of will go through some struggles and then ends up turning it into something like this, like something insanely beautiful. So there's always the joke of like him sort of getting upset or freaking out, and then someone's like, "Oh, dude, is he okay?" And we're like, "Nah, just give him like 20 minutes. He's gonna write the best thing you've ever heard in your life.
It'll be the best part of the record. Trust us.
Don't worry about it."
Yeah. No, and so like this was and I think I said this before, but this was the hardest song all the way around for me to write, both like as far as being vulnerable, but also as far as like what to do on it. Because Jay had the idea, the phrase is long, and we had this concept of like, we're just gonna ride this nice gentle groove, and then we sort of flip it a little bit at the end of the song where we add the kind of, it's almost rushy section with the big chords. But I also wanted to take the approach of like, how can I be as simple as possible on this? Like I wanted like a gentle touch to the guitar part, and it took like with the guitar and the vocals and the lyrics, like every part for this, like, and this is like something that if people are like songwriters out there and they're like, if it's not great the first time I write it, like, can it be really good? Like I probably rewrote all my parts like 5 times for every single aspect of this track. And so like it evolved into the guitar part I have, and it's one of the guitar parts I'm the most proud of, even though it's not that hard to play. I just think it's one of the most melodic things I've ever written, and I think it does musically exactly what it's supposed to do. And it was sort of obvious in the room the day that I showed up with what's now on the album. Everyone was like, yep, that was different than the last 4 practices, you know. And like as far as the lyric, I think like if the hero in the Temple of the Mind song is this like epic about finding yourself in a spot where you realize you have to sort of leave part of you behind and move on to something else, this song is just me explaining what that actually was in my life at that moment. And you know, the lyric 10 years older, never sober, broke boy soldier, everything's a mess is like, that's where I was when I wrote that.
That actually was a line that hit really close. Like I told you, I'm not a big lyrics person, but that one actually stuck out really strong.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah. And it was cool, I think, also as a band, just writing that song as a group. I felt us just grow as a band, like not necessarily like as musicians necessarily, but like as people who write songs together,
the unit.
Yeah, we grew and got to a new place as a band just with that last track, and so it was really cool. And I think it was the last thing we literally wrote for the album. It just happened to ironically also end up at the end of the record.
Yeah, man, and like it had this super cathartic feeling of once it was finalized, the whole thing was finalized, and it was just, it's like this anthem for feeling fucked up but getting through it, and that's how it felt, and it was like perfect, dude.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it is a great way to end the album, other than, you know, obviously the outro,
Right.
which you guys will hear as the end of this episode. I'll put it in the end credits. I don't normally do that, but I'm doing that.
I love it.
But now I'm gonna take a moment. I'm gonna share my final thoughts on the album as a whole.
Please do.
I gave it a pretty solid listen. I listened to it a handful of times. I cannot say this enough. I really do enjoy it. It's adventurous. It's fun. It's not too serious, but it's not too silly. And the big thing that really stands out to me, and while I've mentioned it a few times, is that it doesn't. How am I going to put this? My notes are not doing me justice here. I feel like with other artists, the album is not. Oh my God, how am I going to word this? Let me start over.
Yeah.
It's refreshing. It wasn't unpredictable, but at the same time, it wasn't just, I knew it was going to be this.
Right.
When I was listening to it, it felt not familiar, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. The whole time I was listening to it with a lot of other artists that I've done this with, it feels like I'm like, this is exactly what I want, but it's more grown.
Right.
This album just, like the last track, just had this breath of fresh air.
That's awesome.
There was something about it that like I wanted to love all of. Like from the start to the finish, like I said, you know, opening with G.I. Johnny, easy to connect, but didn't make me want to go past it. I was like, no, I have to listen. If they're starting with this track that I've grown to love so fondly, and they want to get that out of the way now, what has to come after it? And every single track that came after it brought more and more and more to the table. You get to experience something so special in it. And the album itself it just has something that makes me love music. And to be able to capture that as a full album, guys, I can't tell you enough. It's so good.
Dude,
Thank you, man. Yeah, seriously.
I appreciate it.
Really, that means the world, man, really.
And I hope you know that I feel like this is an album that I think is going to stand for a long time. Like, it's really something that I think is going to mean a lot in the future, as it does to me right now.
That's
Thank
so awesome,
you.
dude.
Seriously.
Thank you,
Thank you, man.
It means a lot to us.
Dude, I genuinely was almost gonna lose it too because I was just sitting here like, I can't believe someone's saying this about.
Yeah, for real,
Like,
dude.
I was like,
yeah.
I might cry. Like, oh no, yeah, dude, I don't. You got me speechless. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for real. That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, man. And I'm happy that the effort we put into it seems to be coming through the speakers, and like that means a fucking ton, because it was a monumental task. Like I said this before, but like we are not the same band we were in any facet from when we started writing this. Like we're in a whole new league, and we've had all the pains and bumps and bruises of growing into that new league, and we tried to put all of it on the record.
I was just
and
gonna say, I think you see it on the record.
yeah, and I it's awesome that that you got that out of it, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, and I hope in 2 days when this comes out and everybody gets to listen to it proper, that they really, really take the time and appreciate it for the experience that it is. Because not only is every track a hit, but the album is a hit. Like, you know what I mean? It's a no-skip album.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, but with that being said, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've mentioned many, many times that, you guys have the show in 2 days from when this comes out.
Yes.
But what else can we look forward to for, let's say, between now and like, let's do March? What's coming up for the next few months?
Oh yeah, so we made a record in 2019. It came out a month before COVID happened.
Well, yeah, we played the release show the day before lockdown.
Yes.
Dude. Yeah, it was beyond ironic. And so, but we had this record called Sauce, and people who are fans of the band, they know the songs off that record. And what we're doing next year is we've gone to Hollowed Halls, which is a really awesome studio in town. This guy named Dave Straight, who's a sound guy, how we met him, he did sound for us, but just an unbelievable dude. One of the best dudes we've met who does what he does. And he was super, like, he wanted to make a record with us, and we haven't really had that experience before. Everyone else we've sought out. And so we thought, these songs really didn't get recorded to the justice that they deserved, especially now that we've made a record that got recorded the way it should have. And so what we're doing next year is a re-release of Sauce. And so, we live in 2024, going to be 2025. So we're doing singles every 8 weeks. But we're an album band. So just like this album, we're going to do a year of singles of these re-releases, and then drop the new Sauce at the end of next year. So kind of for people who have been fans of the band, it'll be an awesome like reintroduction to these songs, and you'll get to hear them at like Eptom quality.
Yeah, and you'll be able to share them with your friends and say, this actually sounds great.
Yes, yeah. And for people who are new, it'll be like you get a whole new album coming out next year. So
Hell yeah. And it'd be a great opportunity to have you guys back again.
yes, sir.
Technically talking about an album that's been out for a while.
That'd be fun.
We love you, Jimmy. We'll come back whenever. Man.
Of course, you guys. Of course. I'm happy to have you back anytime.
Thank you.
For this next one, go ahead and look straight at your cameras. Tell everybody how they can find you.
Oh, we are on Instagram at Titans of Industry Band. Same on TikTok and Facebook and basically all the other social medias. Other than that, you can go to our website, toitheband.com, and we have our full calendar up there, as well as merch and just everything Titans of Industry. All of our music videos, all of our live sets that have been recorded is on toitheband.com. So.
While we're on the subject of merch, we got vinyl records coming out. What? But I'm kind of a subpar businessman, and I didn't get the order in on time for the release show. So those will be out sometime in February, I'm hoping. If you want to pre-order that, you can pre-order that.
Yeah, we will be having a pre-order list at the release show. So
Yes.
if you see this, you want to come to the show in 2 days, we will be there. You can put your name down. You can get in line for a vinyl, and we'll ship it to you when it comes out.
Yeah, and hey, if you don't like pre-ordering stuff, they'll be available in February.
Yup.
Hell yeah. All right. And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you guys want to put on while you're on here?
Oh yeah, I'd like to just give a shout out to Greg and Chris real quick. So my guitar teacher is this guy named Greg Harrison. He's unbelievable. He was the guitar chair at Musicians Institute for like a decade. He wrote the current curriculum that's at Musicians Institute for the guitar department.
Damn it. Now I'm sad I picked Greg as the name for my joke earlier.
Oh no.
That's so funny.
Greg.
But
No relation.
but Greg's really been a mentor and like a coach to me through the process of making this album. I mentioned earlier he helped me a lot with the engineering, but also he helped me when I was having writer's block, and he would toss me ideas and tell me what he, like we were saying with Meth Beard, what he liked and didn't like. And Greg is the reason that the album sounds so good, not only for the engineering, but we were struggling to get mixes we liked in-house. And I was lamenting to Greg one day on a Zoom call, and he goes, "Yeah, I got this friend who's the producer for Slipknot and Korn. I've known him for like 20 years. I want you to send him an email right now." And I'm doing my best Greg impression here. He goes, "I want you to send him an email right now and tell him I told him to make your album." And I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing that, Greg. And he made me send the email on the Zoom call. He was like, "We're not getting off the computer until you do this." And he made me read him the email. And this guy named Chris Collier, he's made an album with Head PE. He made a Lynch Mob album in 2016. He did all the Whitesnake remasters. He made the last Korn album. He made the Slipknot album that's coming out in a year or two. It's not out yet, but he was the mixer, master, and engineer on that. And then Mick Mars just left Motley Crue. Went and made an album with Chris. Chris plays bass on that album, and he produced it. I think he plays drums too. He might just be the whole rhythm section because he was a pro drummer.
Yeah.
That's how Greg met him. They were on tour back in the day supporting new metal bands. Greg used to be in Head PE and stuff like that. And so, but we got an email back, no joke, 24 hours later, and it just said, "Nice track. How many songs?" And we were like, I guess he likes it, bro. And so, I just like, Chris, Greg is awesome. He's kind of in his glory days. He's left LA behind, and he's playing jazz gigs for like $700 a pop at steakhouses and teaching. And, he's rode off into the sunset. And so Greg's the homie, but Chris is for sure the most decorated guy we've ever worked with. And so we're super grateful that he took the time to, not only make this album, but like listen to us. Like he sent us, I think we had like all the songs back, and there just something was missing. And we wrote him and we were like, "Hey man, we like this, but what do you think about these ideas?" And this dude who's, made records with a ton of people just literally sat down and remixed the entire album for us and was like, "You like it now?" And we loved it, And so like, we couldn't be more grateful that he not only wanted to work with us, but he actually worked with us. He actually like was dedicated to like giving us the product that we wanted.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, that is a solid shout out, and shout out to Greg one more time.
Yeah.
You did the work.
Yeah.
All right. With that being said, I do have one last question to go.
Please.
But first, I got to steal the camera for just a second.
Absolutely.
As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, the final question, which now that I'm looking at my notes, is not actually the final question. So we have two. Surprise.
Fun. Wow. Yay.
Stuck in there.
Good. I don't want.
So
The homie's bringing you extra content. Make sure you subscribe.
For real, do it.
all right, now this was supposed to be before the wrap up. That's my bad for pushing it down.
It's all good.
From the very beginning of making the album to what will be the release in 2 days, what are some of your favorite moments from the creation of the album?
Ooh, that's a great question. For me, there's a lot. There's a lot for sure. I think just to boil it down to one thing, so I don't ramble. Like we've kind of already touched on it. I've talked about it, but just sort of being so defined in the fact that we do want this. Like I said, we've just gone through a lot. So the fact that we are still sitting here today together, and seeing what we are actually capable of is just incredible to me. Because like I said, we could have not been a band, and we love the music and each other enough. And so when I listen to this back, I guess like just the fact that it was even made in the first place is just really cool to me. And so that's it for me, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely my favorite moment is the moment that I decided that it was good enough to press to vinyl. I'm a dude, just such a huge music nerd, and I've had a music collection my entire life. You know, it started with CDs back in the day, but of course, I had to start getting records at some point. And
for those of you who can't see it because it's off camera, I'm a fan myself.
yes, sir. And you know, like I went from a few dozen to a few hundred far faster than I ever would have anticipated.
Full ass bookshelf.
Yeah, it's
And-
awesome actually.
Just the feeling that I've got one is really fun.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
So it's kind of similar to Jay's comment, and I guess it's not a moment, so I'm sorry to derail your question, but when I came up with the idea for Titans, and it really predated Titans since I was like 15, and Jay knows this because he was my drummer back then.
Yep.
We've been around forever. Is like I really always wanted to be in a band like Led Zeppelin, the way at least Led Zeppelin was described, and like bands like Rush, where you can't have the band without the individuals that are in the band, and the creative influence of those individuals is what the sound is. And I've always wanted Titans to be that, and it's always kind of bridged on being that, or almost has been that. But I think kind of, especially with like the writer's block and having to get into doing like media, I mean, all the things we had to grow into in the making of this album, and I had to become like a real band manager, and like these guys had to get used to being managed, like, you know, that kind of stuff. Lord. We really are that now. And we kind of put our money where our mouth was, and we stood at the edge of those cliffs and looked down and went, all right, yeah, we got to get over this thing, you know, and we did, and we're still here. And so that's sort of, it's the same comment as Jay sort of, but like for me, as someone who's envisioned a band like this for myself since I was like 16 years old, I'm there now. And that like it's just invaluable. There isn't like, I hope we never stop doing it, honestly. Like I'll be, the day that we're never going to have another band practice is going to be a really sad day.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that won't happen if it does for a very, very long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. All right. Now for the real final question. Now, usually I end it with just what's an obscure album you would all recommend. Yeah, we all know that one.
Sure.
For this, what is an album that helped influence this album for each of you?
Ooh.
I can go first. This is easy for me. Frizzle Fry, bro. Frizzle Fry. I mean, from the end caps, you know, to Defy, to just wanting to put a project out there. Primus is and always will be my biggest influence.
Hey, I mean, without even knowing that, I mentioned a Primus reference for your bass playing earlier.
Yes, sir.
It is apparent.
Yes, sir.
You got one, Jay?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of the question, I think, but like, I was trying to think. I don't really think there was one, to be honest, and that's not trying to like, you know, say anything about whatever, you know, obviously there's influences from other bands and stuff like that, but in terms of like an example of what I wanted it to be like, I don't think there ever was one. You know, I just I wish I wanted it to be us, and it is. And so, you know.
No, I dig that.
Yeah.
Yeah, oddly enough, there's a lot. I'm gonna go with the weirder one just because it's potentially more interesting, but just not necessarily an album by this band, but Blink-182. And I think it's most obvious on Life, the Universe, and Almost Everything that's an influence, but there's lots of the Tom DeLonge make a nursery rhyme. You know, he talks about like you want things to sort of be like nursery rhymes, and they really take that to an extreme in Blink-182. But that idea of like the simplicity is going to carry was something that I really came back to over and over again in this record, and very often I would think about that particular interview from Tom. And so Blink-182 has always been a giant influence on me. First CD I ever bought at 10 years old was Enema of the State. So they're right in the crux of my musical journey. But yeah, that Blink was on my mind during quite a bit of this record, as much as it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, no, I dig that. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for sharing that, and then for sharing the time and taking and talking about the album with us.
Yeah, absolutely,
man. Thanks for
man.
sharing your time as well.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
We're excited for it to come out in 2 days. If y'all aren't going to the show, go to the show.
Yeah.
No other
Be
option.
ripping.
But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get up and out of here. You guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank
yeah,
you,
man.
Jimmy.
You guys.
Hey, Jimmy.
Yeah, dog.
And this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jam Box. I'm Jimmy,
I'm JJ.
I'm Mitch.
I'm Scott.
and we're signing off. Later, y'all.
Peace.